Okay. We're live. So super. So let me also start the recording for the people that will need to see this recording later. But we are now online. So welcome everybody. Let me share with you some more nice screen, so you can see the faces of the amazing panelists that we have now with us today. I'm gonna meet all on the Zoom chat as well, so we're gonna have all these interactive participants in the room with us today. So welcome everybody here in the call on Zoom as well. And you will just to again, if the team can help me with admitting the people that are continuing to join the waiting room, that would be great. So just a couple of housekeeping information for the ones that just joined. We are here today to talk about the story of the model of Hire. This amazing company that is making rounds in management articles all over the world and conferences, and everybody wants to understand better. And this is our first step for us in a partnership between Hire Modern Research Institute, Corporate Rebels, Thinkers 50, and Boundaryless to kind of guide you guys through this universe. So we started today with just a short webinar. It's going to be probably something like an hour and a half, and it's going to be interactive to some extent, so that the 100 lucky ones that could join us in the Zoom room will be given the possibility possibly also to share questions directly with our panelists. But you can also, in the YouTube channel, you can also, of course, share your questions, and the team of Boundaryless will moderate your questions, and somehow we're gonna pick some of these questions for sharing them with our panelists. So first of all, I would like to introduce you the amazing panelists that we have today. Of course, let me introduce myself. I'm Simone from Boundaryless, and I'm going to be your host for today, together with my panelists, our panelists. And today with us we have Sylvia from Hire. Sylvia, do you want to say hello? Can you hear us? Yes. We don't hear you at the moment, so I'm going to move into presenting Joost from Corporate Rebels.
Hi, hello. You guys,
okay.
Can you hear
yes.
me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
I think I'm suffering from some technical problems. I'm hearing double voices. I'm hearing Simone's voices. I think it's something wrong.
Yeah, maybe you have the YouTube stream activated, so you need to probably stop the audio of the YouTube. This probably going to help. So, but nice to hear your voice. So nice to know that you are connected with us. So thanks for saying hello, Sylvia.
How should I close that?
You should close the. Well, maybe somebody can help Sylvia in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to move into presenting Joost.
Hi, Simone. How are you?
Hello, good afternoon. And Bill with us, Bill Fischer. Bill, do you want to say hello? You're muted, Bill, so I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself to just say hello.
Right. Hello, everyone. Bill Fischer, IMD Business School.
And Stuart, do you want to say hello, Stuart, as well?
Good afternoon from London.
Hi, so Stuart is with us from Thinkers 50. So I'm not a big fan of long introductions, but I want to leave the floor quickly to Stuart and Bill that will drive us through the first part of this conversation. So the first part of this conversation will basically be focused on the story and the story of Hire, how we got here where we are. No? So I'm gonna ask you guys to take the floor. Bill, it would be great to see you. We don't see your video at the moment, so if you can ensure that you are showing your video, that's perfect. So Stuart, do you want to drive us through this initial part?
Okay, thanks very much, Simone. Hello, I'm Stuart Crainer. I'm the co-founder of the Thinkers 50, and we're really pleased to be partnering with Hire in the European Rendanheyi Research Centre to find out more about Hire's transformative management model. So I'm going to talk for a little while about my impressions of Hire, then introduce Bill, and then from there we'll talk to Joost and Simone and Sylvia. So first, briefly, the context, the story. Hire is actually one of the most famous corporate stories of the last 30 years now. Zhang Ruimin, now the CEO of Hire, was originally a lathe operator, and then he was transferred to the Qingdao Home Appliances Company in 1982, and he became the general manager in 1984. At that time, the company was working in a virtually derelict factory in absolutely appalling conditions. It was ridden with debt, and the products it produced were of a very, very low quality. So it was in a terrible situation. There's a famous incident soon after that when Zhang Ruimin, after visiting Germany, where he saw white goods being very efficiently and manufactured to very high standards, he destroyed 76 defective fridges, which were going to go out of the door, to make a point that only the highest possible quality standards were good enough for the company in the future. And that's one of the most legendary pieces of executive theatre in corporate history. And by 1986, the company was making a profit. What's interesting after that was the focus of its growth. So it started off by focusing on brand building, and then it moved on to diversification, then internationalization, then globalization, and then networking. Over each period, there was a really strong focus to the company's growth. It acquired companies along the way. Most eye-catchingly, its acquisitions peaked in 2016 when it bought GE Appliances for $5.6 billion. An amazing turnaround from working in a derelict factory to taking over one of the most famous names in the American corporate world. Now, Hire has more than 77,000 employees, operates worldwide, and is the world's biggest white goods manufacturer. So it's an amazing story. My own connection with Hire goes back to a book I wrote in 2000 called The Management Century. Soon after that, it was a story about the history of management in the 20th century, which is quintessentially an American story, because the best practice and the best ideas were largely American, with a few European and Japanese interludes in the 20th century. The Chinese edition of the book came out, and it was read by Zhang Ruimin, who's a voracious reader of business books. And from that, I met Zhang Ruimin and visited the company. It seems to me, thinking about it and in conversation with Zhang, there's some similarities, and this is slightly overblown, comparing Zhang to Nelson Mandela. When Nelson Mandela was in Robben Island, his realization was that to come to a solution with apartheid, he would have to talk to the white Afrikaans population. He would have to find a means of relating to them. So he learnt Afrikaans so he could talk to his prison guard, and thereafter he could relate to what their agenda was and how they understood the world. I think a very similar thing happened with Hire, in that Zhang Ruimin learnt the language of management. He connected with the ideas of management, in particular Peter Drucker, who he read very early on. He learnt the language of management and the ideas of management, and that allowed him to create Hire. I think before Bill speaks, I'd just like to make 6 points what I've kind of learned from my interactions from Hire. First of all, it's a very uniquely Chinese story. We've got to, I think there's a danger when we look at corporate benchmarks of great corporate practice, that we habitually look at them through a Western lens, because we're used to looking at big American corporations and trying to learn things from them, or big European corporations. But I think this is a uniquely Chinese story, and it is a mistake to put a Western lens on it, because the Chinese experience of management and perspective of management and other things is uniquely Chinese. I talked to Zhang Ruimin, one of my first conversations with him. He was talking to me about the idea of scientific management, which was popular at the beginning of the 20th century and championed by Frederick Taylor. And basically the idea of scientific management was this, that the manager would have a stopwatch and stand next to the worker doing the work and ensure that they did the work in the right time. And once the manager knew that it took 10 minutes to dig a hole, they could insist that the worker took 10 minutes to dig a hole. And that was the role of management in the Western world throughout the 20th century, largely, holding a stopwatch. Talking to Zhang Ruimin, it became clear that the Chinese viewed the same idea very differently. He saw that by knowing that it took 10 minutes to dig the hole, he saw that the worker digging the hole was given the power and given the leverage. It's a very different take on the world. And I think you could apply that throughout Hire's philosophy and way of operating. It's a very Chinese organization, and out of respect, we should consider it such. The second thing I've learned is that it's a very messy organization. We're used to thinking of companies in neat hierarchies and organizational charts. The model of organizations is very linear, the Ford production model. But in fact, a company like Hire is a much messier organization. And the Chinese and the people at Hire are very comfortable with ambiguity and vagueness and complexity in a way that's often difficult to understand. I've sat through many presentations at Hire as they've sought to explain their incredible management model. And often it's very difficult to understand, but that's just because the sheer complexity of it. And they're comfortable with that in a way that is very different from that usually experienced in the West. The third big idea I've taken away from Hire is the idea of zero distance between employees and customers. In many ways, Hire is an old-fashioned company. It's not built solely around technology, but it's built around developing close relationships with customers and management innovation and management as a competitive advantage. In many ways, what it's doing is reinventing the relationship between the company and customers. I think this is a big issue. You think of the American role models, they tend to be companies like Google, Apple, Facebook. They tend to be technology companies first and foremost. They don't actually see, if you're on Facebook, they don't actually see you as a customer, they see you as a user. I think the big difference with Hire is that it sees customers as customers and wants to develop as close relationships with them as possible. That's quite an old-fashioned thing. The fourth thing I think is really important about Hire is its emphasis on teams. The Western world, I think, remains fixated on individuals and organizations. That's how our performance measurements and rewards are structured, around individuals and organizations. Teams are actually very central to a lot of Western organizations, but they're crucial to Hire. I think we need a lot more work done on the real dynamics of team working. There's not many people doing great work in that area. I mean, Amy Edmondson at Harvard Business School, but teams are really central to understanding Hire, and their ability to give teams power and autonomy and responsibility is really interesting and probably unique in the corporate world. I'm sure Joost will talk about that later. The fifth thing I think, which is eye-catching about Hire, I went through earlier about the strategic phases they've been through: brand building, diversification, globalization, internationalization, etc. They have changed and then they've changed again. And I think that's remarkable in an organization. I can't think of another corporation which has demonstrated that appetite for repeated change. Hire regards change not as an episode, not as a program, not as an initiative, but a way of thinking, a kind of philosophy of life. And that constant appetite for change is really impressive and allows the company to continue growing, but to stay ahead of the competition. And the final thing I think of, which is eye-catching about Hire, goes back to Zhang Ruimin, is its openness to learning. Zhang Ruimin is a voracious reader of business books, And it's amazing how many CEOs' offices and senior executives' offices I've been in, and I haven't seen any books. But he consumes information and ideas. And I think that goes to the heart of why Hire has been successful and has remained a humble organization, because by stating that you're open to ideas, you're saying that you don't have all the answers. So those are the things I've taken away from my visits to Hire and conversations with Zhang Ruimin. I think it's a remarkable company. And the person who really brought Hire to the world's attention is Bill Fischer. Bill is from IMD in Switzerland. We inducted him into the Thinkers 50 Hall of Fame last year. And it was very well deserved, because he has an amazing track record of curiosity. His book, Reinventing Giants, told the Hire story and brought it to an international audience for the first time. So welcome from New York to Bill.
Thank you, Stuart. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. There are a few topics I'm more enthusiastic about talking about than Hire. And what I'd like to do is just for a second, think about all of the things Stuart said, and then say that we're about to embark in an overview of, not a detailed discussion, but an overview, an introduction to a transformation journey of one organization that's gone on for nearly 40 years. And I think that that's remarkable as well, because you don't see that degree of continuity when you talk about organizations and when you talk about change. When I think about it, I think what you're about to see is one story with many chapters. Each chapter is different. Each chapter represents profound changes in the business environment. Each chapter represents a new business model. Each chapter represents essentially a new organizational culture. But there's a degree of continuity going on here that is one of the things I hope you take away from today. This is about continuous change. It's not about episodic change. It's about the advantages of making change normal, natural, rather than making it something to be afraid of or something that happens every so often, and if only we can avoid it. So Simone, if you could put the slide on that shows the pre-Rendanheyi era. Yes, so for the next few minutes, we're going to basically look at a period between 1986 and 2013, where Hire went through several major changes. And I'm not going to get into each of these changes in detail, but what I want you to see is that everything they do sort of follows a constant or a familiar path. There's nothing here that's threatening to the people who have to do the change. The changes are profound. You can see from these icons that the physical representation of the organization changes in ways that sort of defies description. Most of us have been in the same hierarchical pyramid our entire career. If you've been at Hire between 1986 and 2013, you went through at least 4 major reconfigurations of the organization. So change is continuous. Change is always launched at a time when Hire is successful. So this is not about burning platform changes. This is about industry destabilizing changes when resources are abundant and people feel good about themselves. And I think that's a very powerful advantage that Hire has been able to build in to its change process. And when we move on beyond 2013 in just a few minutes, what you'll see is the same thing has happened there. It's always change while strong rather than change while weak. I think the third thing that I want you to understand is that Hire throughout this entire period has really had 2 major meta objectives. One objective is to serve the customer better. So all of these changes are being done outside in the service of the customer. And the second meta objective is a recognition that hires people know a lot of things. They're in a sense experts in the industry. And if hire could unleash the talent potential in that group, then it would really have an advantage that most other organizations don't have. And what you'll see is that those two meta objectives have run through the entire hire story. The fourth thing that I think is worth noting, and Simone, if you could go to the next slide, please, is that this is a really well thought out process. So there's nothing improvisational about it. It's combining creativity and discipline. And those of you who have been at IMD and been through the Driving Strategic Innovation program know that Charlie Fine and I believe that creativity and discipline are natural complementers when it comes to successful innovation. So this is about what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? And one way to think about it is the what. If you think about the what, every so often, profound changes in hires, business environment leads them to rethink their business model. What exactly are we doing? How does our business model change? What should our value propositions be? And then how are we going to do this? So they're moving between detailed discussions of something like Alex Osterwalder's business model canvas. Could you flick on the next slide, please? This is the dreams part. Yeah, so I'm not going to go through this much to your relief, but it's basically very granular choices being made about what exactly is going to happen in that business model that we're pursuing to reach our dreams. And then if you flick on the next slide and look at Jay Galbraith's star, how exactly are we going to do this? I think there's one more chart here, one more move. Yes. Oh, there's a couple. So for each of these skills and talent and organization values, how are actually we going to build an organization that's well aligned so that in fact the culture of the organization is now fit to support the vision that's represented in our business model. So three things to leave with at the moment. One is what makes hire important is the persistence. These two overriding goals: better service and unleashing the talent in our company. The second thing is consistent. 35 years of doing this, 37 years of doing this. So, in a sense, this is a really long story with a lot of different chapters that we can compare and contrast, but they're all building on the same type of learning. And then the third thing is, this is 70,000 people. This is not a bunch of kids in flip-flops in some incubator in Silicon Valley. This is real people making real things. And one of the reasons that Hire has been so attractive, I think, is that it's not a new economy company. It's essentially an old economy company that's been turned around with visionary leadership, with dreams and details that have driven the change. Now, what you're going to see, if you could click on the next slide, Simone, what you're going to see is that there have been some profound changes. When the Internet of Things hit the homes we live in, the smart home concept developed. And if you could hit the next slide, what we see is there's a whole realm of environments and scenarios and devices and technologies and content that Hire and most firms in the old economy were unprepared for. And so what happens at 2013 is a need to really rethink, where do we get our ideas from? How do we bring them to the marketplace? And how do we do it with people who know things that we don't know? Because we've never had to learn these things before. And so I'm going to turn this over to Simone and Joost now. But what I hope you, when you listen to what they have to say, I hope you see that these overriding themes, there's a continuity that runs through this that makes it actually easier for Hire to do these things rather than more difficult. Simone, Joost?
Yes, thanks, Bill. Thanks very much. So let me make a quick reflection to hand over the conversation to Joost and have a conversation on that. So I think you guys, both Stuart and Bill, you really nailed that. I mean, you really effectively explain, the specificity of this organization. But now with Joost, we want to explore a bit more, let's say, how these patterns of organizing that we have seen playing out in higher are to be, and sorry, Bill, I will mute you just to avoid the noises. And so basically how these patterns of organizing are really not exclusive to higher. So how to some extent we are both seeing already similar patterns in many other places, not many maybe, but several other places in the world. And to another, on the other hand, also how the patterns that are characteristics of Rendanheyi and higher can be replicated somewhere else. So there is this idea. One thing I want to share, I think, before starting this conversation on this replicability of the model and the more common application that we can seek for, is a consideration that I made a few days ago when I was talking with some professor from University of Boulder, Mark Mini. We were having this conversation higher, and suddenly I realized that. If there is a pillar of Rendanheyi, is change. So actually, maybe Rendanheyi is not really about how you are organized, but it's about embracing change deeply in the way you organize. And I recall when I was in Qingdao and I was listening to Zhang Ruimin presentation. He made this point that either you change or you become, as he said, a museum exhibit. So that's the idea really that I think is at the core of Rendanheyi, not really just the operational model and the organizational model, but really embracing deeply this idea of adapting your organizational model and your practices of organizing to a world that is in constant change, in flux. So I find this fascinating. So having said that, so just as a little premise, Joost, do you want to drive us a little bit through a more generalizing pattern of these concepts?
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Simone, for your introduction. So with Corporate Rebels, we have been visiting many pioneering firms around the world for the last years. So more than 100 at the moment. And higher, of course, is one of the most unique one. We speak a lot about, or you speak also a lot about organizing and organizing the firm, maybe inside and outside. But I think it's kind of important that we establish some kind of universal elements with each other, so we can discuss what higher actually makes different than traditional firms, and maybe also a little bit different than the other pioneering firms we have visited so far. So if we look at organizing itself or organizing the organization, we can separate it in three, I think, three general things, as you can see on the slide. And I have just draw that a little bit, so you can, at first, at the biggest level, you see like there's like organizing of direction, which in the most firms they will call that strategy. Then there is the problem of cutting down that direction in like smaller parts or smaller tasks, which many academics will call like the division of labor. And then when you have a firm where everybody is doing different kind of tasks, then there's a problem, or there's the issue of coordinating all those tasks together to make an efficient and productive working environment, which academics would call the integration of effort. So keep in mind that I will talk about this kind of three different elements of organizing. Can you show the next slide? So, and if we, Bill was talking about having this higher, I would say, before Rendanheyi status, which was, I think, from 1984, 86 till 2013. And if we look at the left side of the screen, I have tried to describe the pre-Rendanheyi model of higher, and I think the model of many traditional firms at the moment still, into these three elements. And if we will fill in those three elements, I think many people will be familiar with that, that the direction of the firm is often set by strategy, often defined by top leadership teams, or at least some kind of people up, very up in the hierarchy. Then the problem of division of labor is often solved by a clear hierarchy that many of us are still familiar with. And the integration of effort is then solved by bureaucracy. I think at Hire it was also like this, still like 2013, although they have pioneered very much from the early stage with things like self-management and empowerment of workers, but still it was all kind of limited in this pyramid paradigm that we are used to from the 1800s. And then we see around 2013, 2014, this like big shift to the micro-enterprise phase. And this is also the moment that Zhang Ruimin, or the top leadership of Hire, decided to fire the 12,000 middle managers of Hire. And this is something we see more often in big organizations that are pioneering, that they have a lack of middle management. But if you kind of fire all the middle management, you need something else in place. You need to have something else in place to keep the firm successfully organized both on the vertical level and on the horizontal level. And what many of these organizations seem to do is implement as a solution is this kind of network, so network of teams, which we call them in our recent book. And the big shift is not so much in strategy, because I think at the moment strategy at Hire is still done by top management. That has been the case for like 40 to 50 years. But whereas the big change is in the way they organize both the horizontal level and the vertical level by implementing this network you see on the right side. And on this right side, the hierarchy is kind of substituted by small autonomous building blocks, which are in the case of Hire teams, like Stuart highlighted before. And the bureaucracy is replaced by some kind of interactions between those building blocks. So can you shift the next slide, please? And if you like would divide these building blocks and these interactions, and if we take a broader look beyond Hire, from all the firms we have seen, we can make like a few distinctions. So if we would break up the building blocks, we can basically have two options. We see an option of having single individuals being the fundamental building blocks. They come together, the people or the employees, they form a temporal team, they do their task and they dissolve again. On the other side, I would say on the top of the screen, you can see that there is also a lot of organizations forming like permanent teams, like Hire, but there's several other organizations doing that. And they either organize around teams, on the fixed teams, or around, sometimes even around fixed organizations. And in terms of interactions, you can play around also with two kind of dynamics. On the one side, you see collaboration interactions, so based on working together and forming like corporations. Or on the right side, you can see a much more competitive mode of interaction, where actually teams are competing internally for resources and for other kind of collaboration mechanisms. So if we draw those things in kind of a model, okay, which I show in the next slide, then you can see on the left side that you can kind of rank it from individuals to teams to organizations as building blocks, and as interactions you can go from a very much collaboration mode to a very much competitive mode. And then we can see actually that Hire has a kind of a unique position within a framework of other organizations. And I think what Stuart highlighted, like Hire can be found in this kind of team structure where teams are very competitive, fighting for internal and external resources. But Hire is not just unique. Like if we compare Hire to other organizations in the world, we can see that Hire has this kind of structured around teams, but we see the same dynamics, for example, the Dutch healthcare organization called Buurtzorg. Although Buurtzorg hasn't have much truly competitive interactions, they are mostly base themselves, or they rely on much more cooperation mechanisms. And there are some other companies you can see in the graph. There is like the W.L. Gore company, which is like the mother company of Gore-Tex. There's 10,000 people working there. They also manufacturing like clothes and other kind of industrial products. They do similar things to hire, only on the individual level. So what there are no teams like competing with each other, but it's the individual competing with each other. And then, not many people know that, but if you look at how Visa was organized like many years ago, then there was this kind of competitive element in Visa, but then on the organizational level. Can we go to the next slide? And that's actually what we have seen, I think, for the last, like with the people from Corporate Rebels, we have been visiting Hire for many times now over the last 3 or 4 years. And since that time, we kind of see like a shift happening. And this shift is happening actually at this moment, from the shift of having this Rendanheyi, what we could call like the 1.0 model, which was very much based on teams competing with each other. And they find out that this sometimes can lead to too much competition. So now they are moving, and this comes back to, I think, Bill's introduction, that Hire is a company that's continually experimenting with new things. And now they are experimenting with this kind of Rendanheyi 2.0 model, which includes a few like cooperation mechanisms to make sure that teams don't overly compete with each other, which can lead to an unhealthy balance. And what I expect in the future is that many of the teams that are now still cooperated by the big Hire group in the future will more and more be shared, or the ownership of those teams will be more and more shared by the employees themselves, will lead Hire to go to, I think, one step above and go to this model of building blocks of being actually the organization and not anymore the teams that are part of a bigger corporation. So that was my small introduction. So Simone, I think.
Yeah. So let me take a few minutes in the meantime that I encourage everybody in the chats to address, to write up some questions that you want to address to some of our panelists. So I'm going to take a few minutes more to explore some aspects that I believe are interesting for the conversation and for generating more questions. So maybe I can stop sharing so we can see the speakers more directly. So my question, and this is open to both Bill and Joost, but maybe we can start from Bill quickly, because a few days ago I was commenting on LinkedIn about this idea of widespread profit and loss. So basically, how you basically create this pervasive profit and loss and radically deletional organization, let's say almost modular organization, like Hire is doing. And somebody raised some comments and said, I've seen a lot of failed experiments, because I was making a point that adopting this structure of widespread and pervasive profit and loss was a way to somehow solve the technical debt in the organization and the organizational debt, somehow to push the market inside the organization, in this challenging, context and competitive context. And some people, as I said, were raising the bar and say, okay, but there's been a lot of failures in doing this in the past, especially in European organizations, for example. So I was thinking that maybe something special that Hire is doing is that there are these middle structures, like there's not just the micro enterprise. That's the point. There's also the platforms. There are the EMCs. So all these artifacts, organizational artifacts, that are designed not just to generate these transactions and this contracting, but also to generate what Bill always talks about. So this powerful learning structure that somehow it's attracting the entrepreneurs to have their enterprises inside the group. So because it's like creating this powerful learning engine that it makes it easier for them to become entrepreneur and to get into the market. Bill, do you want to share some thoughts on that?
Oops. So I've always thought that, in a sense, the present day higher organization is a way of taking bolder bets on the future, not by predicting, but by experimenting. And so if you compartmentalize these experiments and in fact encourage competition among rival approaches to a similar problem, what you're doing is you're increasing the likelihood that you're going to be right in the future, not because you're a better predictor, but because you're trying more things, and one of those things may in fact work very, very well. So the creation of the micro enterprises, the ease with which a micro enterprise can be created, strikes me as being an ingenious way to unleash employee ideas and creativity and entrepreneurship, and place bets on the future at a fairly low risk. But what Hire has also done then is to, over time, plant these micro enterprises on platforms, and those platforms share typically a common market. So you have the internet of clothing, you have the internet of food, you have the internet of recreational vehicles, you have smart hospitals, and because you have similar collection of entrepreneurial efforts coexisting on these platforms, the platforms can become extremely powerful learning collectors. They can see what works and what doesn't work. They can draw conclusions. They presumably, John Hagel talks about scalable learning in times when the unknown is great. And I think the platforms can serve that role. I'm not exactly certain, if I'm honest, that they're doing it today as well as they could, but I think this thing is only just beginning. And so what I think Hire has done is to give itself the opportunity to place more bets, and then organizationally, because of architectural changes, to learn more across that set of bets so that they're generating knowledge as a byproduct of the bets that are being placed. I don't know if that answers your question, but it was long.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's for sure one way to address this question. So I'm seeing a lot of questions in the channel about stories. So that's true. I mean, people always want to hear stories. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna ask maybe Sylvia, if you want to step in quickly to the conversation and to share some stories. So maybe you can start from your story or from some stories that you believe are very relevant in terms of how actual workers and teams are working differently. Maybe some story that or you've been involved in terms of enterprising, so creating a new micro enterprise or creating something new products and so on. So happy to listen to you.
Okay, thank you, you guys. That's a very good chat that you did before, and I'm gonna take these questions and talk about how people feel in working in Hire. At first, personally, I think if anybody asked me how I feel about working in Hire, I would say that I'm very proud of being a Hire employee. Not just because it's because that you can always be given opportunities during your work, no matter how old are you and how much experiences you have. You can always be given opportunities as long as you have the idea and you have the plan, and you can set up a project, start your own businesses, and the Hire will give you some support to let you start your businesses. It will be much easier than start your own businesses out of hire and rely only on yourself. So it's not only for me, but for any hire employees, they got equal opportunities. Like I know an ME called EU Vaccine is started by an employee named Mr. Gong Yi. He joined hire in 2005, and that's exactly the same year of when Rendanheyi is proposed. And back then, CEO Zhang is very much promoted the idea of start your own businesses. So in the year 2005, we made a decision that we're gonna remove all middle managers. As you know, we finally we removed like 12,000 middle managers. That's a lot in hire in that big companies, and that's when Mr. Gong is determined to join the army of starting businesses. Back then, the middle managers have two options. The one option is to leave hire, and the second option is to start their own business within hire, and the hire will give them some support financially and for the resources. So Mr. Gong is seized this opportunity, and back then he was just an R&D person, technology person, focusing on the ultra lower temperature refrigerators. And then he saw the opportunity of the vaccine market. He and one of his colleagues went to the vaccine station and observed there for like morning, and he saw that children can be misshot a lot. There are like hundreds of children gonna get shots in one morning, and the nurseries are gonna be very busy. So they got misshot a lot, and their equipment is not that smart. So he thinks that he can find out a solution with IoT solutions that can solve all those problems and create a very safe environment for the vaccine shotting. So he start their own business and start this EU Vaccine ME, and he got some financial support, and he don't have to rent offices outside hire. Hire will provide the HR services, legal services, and technology services, all the shared services. So he saved a lot of costs by doing this. By his own words, to start his own business in hire, if somebody else do this, they worked like 3 years. It's gonna be at 10th floor, but in hire he can achieve this goal only by like 1 year. So it made it very busy. Made it very easy to do this. And one of his members named Mr. Pan, he joined his team for at the very beginning, and he's in charge of the market side. So as Professor Bill Fischer and Joost said, all those salaries comes from the users payment. So it's like if the customer pays 100 yuan, all the employees' salaries will come from that 100 yuan. So in that month, Mr. Pan made a lot of orders, and he got like 100,000 sharings from that orders. So it's it's a pretty exciting journey to start businesses, and even as a normal employee, you can get your value achieved and get a lot of money rather than a fixed salary. So I hope that's interesting.
Thanks, Sylvia. That was very good to know as to share as an example the vaccine project, because it's been very successful as well. So I remember when I was in Qingdao, I've been talking with the team, and there was a really interesting project. So thanks very much for answering this, for telling this story. There's a quick probably a question that we can address on top of that. There is some people from the audience are asking, and maybe this is something for you also, Bill, that you guys have been doing so many interviews, and you can probably complement this. So to explain a bit better how the relationship between autonomy and coherence works in hire. And I'm thinking of, for example, the investing role that the platforms have in dripping down the strategy from the CEO and the vision, I would say, from the CEO and the office of the CEO to the rest of the company through this investment structure. So this I've heard a lot of time that hire has this evolution of relationship between the company and the worker, moving away from an employer-employee relationship into an investor-investee relationship. So do you guys wanna add some thoughts on this from your points of view? Bill, let's start from you so I can do some.
Okay, so my understanding is that the ideas that I've seen that have turned into micro enterprises tend to be the ideas of employees within the organization, or people who are members of a platform who discern or identify an opportunity and become really fascinated by that opportunity and pursue it. So I don't see it as a traditional strategic planning process where people are looking at a set of alternatives, trying to determine where they have advantages and going that way. But I see it as a group of, one way to think about it is a group of informed observers. They're informed observers either because they've been, like the Smart Vaccine program, where the fellow was part of a previous vaccine cabinet and so had some experience in this, or they are people on the platform who are watching a number of different related initiatives and saying, we think there are opportunities that nobody else is seeing. We'd like to pursue them. And so it's harnessing the entrepreneurial energies of the individuals rather than asking people to execute on somebody else's idea from above. And the money part comes from the ability of the now founders, the micro enterprise founders, to convince the organization that there's a real opportunity here and that they need some investment to be able to support the initiatives. So Joost, is that the way you see it?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. I think what is very important is what you mentioned before, this zero distance to the customer. So the platforms are not only like there's not only like people of hire on this platform, but I think more important is all customers of hire or potential customers of hire are also on these platforms, and in this way they are connected, I think, every day, constantly. And I think there is a part, actually, there's a strategy, I think, part of within hire that is taking care of the bigger picture strategy, which I think is still in the hands of top management. So we should not look at this organization, I think, as just being a free network without having any strategic direction. I think there's still top leadership there that has a strong power over the network and tries to guide the network or tries to guide this organization in a certain way. the only thing they do is to push a lot of this authority down to the micro enterprise level. And I think what is interesting is that they would, within Hire, never really refer to employees, but they would more refer to entrepreneurs. And everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. And if you are not an entrepreneur within this organization, I think there's little chance you will stand for long. And what is, I think, a very important aspect that we didn't touch upon yet, I think, is the target setting mechanisms. The fact that if you identify an opportunity for entrepreneurship as a micro enterprise, you can start your initiative and you can kind of subtract your subcontract your kind of idea to the other micro enterprises. But if you subcontract, there will be kind of targets connected to this. And this targets, which is a rule within Hire, must be 10% above the world market or above the general market. And this is kind of a rolling forecast. So it's not that they make, I think, this kind of targets for a year, but it's more like they fix it for 1 week. And they kind of do a rolling forecast for 6 weeks. And everyone within Hire has those targets, and they are meeting every week to discuss those targets. They sometimes I think they meet every day, like a daily stand-up, to discuss their targets and how they are progressing on their targets. And moreover, I think the most successful case studies, or the case studies that show the most interesting progress, or the most potential, they are presented to the top management every Saturday, because then every Saturday there is like the top leadership meeting with I think CEO Zhang Ruimin, and there the most interesting things at that meeting are, I think, then circulated within Hire through all their communication networks, in order to spread that strategy to everyone in the organization. To conclude, I think this is also what happened, for example, with the new EMC phase. EMCs, I think, are not invented by top management that said this is a solution for the competitive problem. It was more that this EMC contract was pioneered by a group internally of Hire. I believe it was the logistic parts. They are started to use this kind of EMC contracts. They presented that to top leadership, and top leadership on their hand encouraged the rest of the organization to follow the EMC contract mechanisms.
Could I just jump in, Simone, and just, so
of course.
If you think about what Joost is saying, many of these micro enterprises are addressing what I call the unknown, areas where technology is intersecting with society in ways that it's never done before. So we don't really have data, we don't have experience, we don't have the sort of feedstock for traditional analytic corporate decision making. But what we do have, because of what Joost referred to as zero distance with the customer, we have a group of people, Hire employees, most of them, but not exclusively, who have who are really on the front lines of the changes that are taking place, and who are being allowed by the organization, being encouraged by the organization to be, rather than fulfilling somebody in corporate headquarters ideas, they're able to interpret what's going on around them and submit proposals based on the energy that comes out of that firsthand experience to build a small, typically 10-person group, end-to-end group, to take responsibility for an experiment. And I think, in a sense, this is incredibly liberating. It builds on firsthand information right at the the coal face, as you say, or right at the cutting edge of what's going on, and it does it very fast. So it's speed, it's insight, and it's experiment. And for me, if you think about the way in which innovation thinking is changing over time, this absolutely captures the primary elements of innovation thinking in organizations that we'll test it and see if the idea works. I'm always amazed at the ingenious ideas that come out of these micro enterprises. Ideas that I think no corporate strategy group would ever come up with because they're too far removed from the action, or because it takes too long for them to respond. But the micro enterprises are well informed, smart, and they are almost inherently focused on the outside. So they build partnerships with other organizations who have unique knowledge that Hire doesn't. And so they're able to move into new areas quicker than others. I think it's a really interesting organizational model.
So I want to, Sylvia, do you want to add something on this?
Yeah. I think Joost and Professor Fischer is right that we won't Hire actually won't deny any entrepreneurial opportunities as long as it comes from the user needs. If you have some ideas and you got a very mature plan to your knowledge, and you can propose your plan, and if the ME owner, the ME founder found this project is promising, they will the organization will give you some fundings for the starters. And if you as you grow, you're gonna if you need more funds, you're gonna have the outside the venture capitals from outside, and then Hire will give you a lot of money to further develop yourself. So so we don't have a boundary, as your company's name suggests, boundaryless. So we are a very open entrepreneurial ecosystem. You can collaborate with the inside with ME's inside Hire and the ME's outside of Hire, and to make your business grow. And if you want to further develop, you can get invested. So generally, Hire owns the bigger share, the main share of an ME if the business is very relevant with Hire's main scope. But we also have some businesses like computers that is not that relevant, but the ME can develop itself, and if it gets bigger, Hire will also allow it to be invested from Hire. So that's my supplement.
Very interesting, Sylvia. Let me take the chance to adding you another question for you, and then I move back to the other panelists to discuss a little bit the cultural, translation.
Sure,
so you guys,
sure.
Unless Stuart, do you want to add something? Because I see you have muted.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that the fluidity in Hire is what's unique about it, the fluidity of the micro enterprises. But I think what they're reinventing really is the internal and external agreements between all these enterprises. I think talking to people in Hire, they're critical of the American system as they regard it as too contract based. Whereas I think what Hire is creating is trust based. That it is assumed that if you spin off a micro enterprise, that it's good for the people involved with the micro enterprise, but it's also good for Hire in now and in the future, because it's a win-win. And I think in the West, we would regard a micro enterprise that spins off from the main organization as potentially dangerous to the main organization in the end. So I think it's a very different perspective and much more fluid. And it's interesting, when I was last, there was an event which Bill and Joost were at in Shanghai last year, and Hire had, I can't remember his name, the Nobel Prize winner, who had done research into different new contracts, how contracts were evolving. And I think that's a very interesting area, because this is what they're doing is reinventing relationships, corporate relationships. Because all these, there are relationships and they need to be administered in some way. So I think that's an emerging area. And I don't think there are any, I don't really think there are any clear answers, but I think that's where they're going, to ever more fluid, but at the same time as part of an understandable ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. And Sylvia, let me get back to the remark that you also made about some, you introduced some point on the EMC, and there's a lot of curiosity in our chat about this evolution between the micro enterprise and the EMC, especially because the EMC also involves EMC, I mean ecosystem micro community. So this involves also parties which are external to the organization. So can you tell a little bit of, since also the EMC is quite new, it's something that was prototyped for the first time last year. So what is the learnings? What are the learnings from the higher model institutes and in general from higher point of view on introducing this new artifact, going beyond the micro enterprise into the ecosystem micro community?
Okay, yes. Speaking of the origin of this concept of ecosystem of micro community, it could be back to a very interesting story. It traces back from our a market guy called Li Jishen, Mr. Li. He's a market guy, and one day, actually, a customer comes to him and said, I may want to buy a washing machine and put it in my balcony. It's very stylish in China these days, and but my balcony is very small, can't be suitable for the size. So and also I may want to redecorate my balcony. Mr. Li is just a salesperson for the washing machine, but he thinks that I have some resources. I can put these things together, like the decoration teams and the washing machine and the designers, to offer the customer a solution. But it can worth a lot than selling a single product. So he did it, and it's actually very successful. But when he wants to replicate these experiences, he actually faces a lot of problems, because it's very hard to attract all those resources to work for him, because it's very complicated promises. So he proposes this question to to hire, and CEO Zhang thinks this is very valuable point, and he wants to help this help to make such practices more easy to conduct. So at the core is to promote the collaborations with different teams. So he comes up with this EMC concept, encourage those MEs and encourage the MEs to collaborate with outside resources to provide a whole set of solutions for the users, like balcony solutions. So he comes up with the concept of EMC. Back then, in the ME stage, when two MEs collaborate with each other, it's just two leaders of these MEs sign a contract, and the technology guy behind this, the team members behind this ME will just receive the fixed salaries. So whether or not the product is successful, be accepted by the customers, they will receive the same amount. So they don't actually care about how users think or whether the product is successful. It's a big problem. It's not a very smart way to share the profits, because if the product fails, the company loses a lot of money, but the employees won't take any responsibilities. So the in the long run is not good for the user experiences. So in the new EMC scheme, when the two teams sign a contract, every single one employee will sign the same contract for the same goal. So if the products is successful, they earn like $100 US. All the employees will be given a share like 10% or 50% according to the contract. But if the product fails, nobody will get a very fair salaries. So everybody, even the technology guy, will care a lot about the user needs. So the products, the solutions, the cooperation between MEs can be very much can be expanded in this way, and employees will be responsible for the user needs.
Mm-hmm.
So
let's say that these kind of contracts that somehow put everybody on the same page work very well also to cross across boundaries, no, between different organizations. So they are very effective in crossing silos that sometimes can form inside the organization. No? So that's, thanks very much for this point. I think one thing that is worth recapping quickly for the questions that I'm seeing on the chat is that normally the process where the hire users to create a new microenterprise goes from capturing the user needs, or sometimes also through these open ideas platforms, right? So when users can also suggest ideas, and then the idea suddenly consolidates into a microenterprise proposal from a small team. If I'm not wrong, we're talking about minimum 3 employees. Then somehow the investment comes from the platform owners that know more or less the strategy and the direction of the company. Then once the microenterprise goes into the market, it grows, and then it starts to create these coalition with other microenterprises internally and externally through the micro community. So this is more or less the path. No? Also to clarify to the questions that I'm seeing coming from the chat. So to break a little bit the flow and come to another very dear topic that I'm seeing mentioned in the chat, and then now I'm opening the question to all our panelists. There's a lot of questions on understanding what happens when hire buys another company. So for example, recently, well, a few years ago, Hire bought GE Appliances, and we all know this story that GE Appliances was having hard times, and suddenly after a few years now is a profitable unit, is working very well. So I don't know, maybe one of you guys, if you want to jump in and share your what do you know about the story of Hire acquiring GE and in general acquiring other companies. What happens then? So how they export the Rendanheyi model, what parts of the model are exported? I remember when I was in China, Zhang Ruimin told me we never helicopter management, so we never bring our management to the acquired company. So what happens then? So again, any of you that wants to jump in addressing this question?
I think kick it off. So I think if we speak about what we spoke about before, I think happens only in China. So the microenterprise, how we describe it now, and the EMC, how we describe it, it's mostly based and pioneered in China. Then if we would move to the other parts of the more, like I would say, satellites of Hire. So if you not only thinking about GE, but also about Sanyo, Fischer and Paykel, and other parts, I think in Candy in Italy. I think Hire doesn't force these parts to adapt the Rendanheyi model, how it is working in China, or how it is pioneered in China. I think what they try to infuse is a certain philosophy. So Rendanheyi is based on certain pillars, on innovation, on entrepreneurship, on the zero distance to customer, all these kind of philosophies or ideas. And they are encouraging top leaders of, for example, GE and Sanyo and Candy to understand those values, to understand this philosophy, and to introduce the same philosophies in their own context. Because I think they don't believe, and I also don't believe, that you can take this concept from China in a Chinese context, like Stuart already said before. It's a very Chinese developed and very Chinese oriented business. I think you cannot just take it and drop it in America and make it work there. So they take many of the lessons and they try to be, I think, as close to the customer as possible, but they have to develop their own solutions to that philosophy.
I think what was interesting with the GE appliances, that when you saw the GE, I mean, you think the GE is a pretty well managed and well run company, but when you, at 2 years after the acquisition by Haier, talking to the GE appliances executives, it was as if they'd been released from some sort of business prison, and that they felt a sense of entrepreneurial opportunity which they hadn't experienced before. As Joost says, I think it's a very light touch. They don't seek to, Haier doesn't seek to carry around a Bible of Rendanheyi and hand it over. I think it'd be interesting to get our definitions of what Rendanheyi is, because we've used that word quite a lot, which is kind of Haier's management philosophy. Joost?
Yeah, like in America, they call, I think at GE, they call that, they also don't call it Rendanheyi, but I think they called it end-to-end model. So they even have their own, they have their own names. They don't like the name micro enterprise because this kind of implies that things are micro, and Americans don't like that apparently. So they create their own terms around it. But I think there are certain mechanisms and certain ideas that for sure are copied, but they are copied into their own cultural context.
But I do think that no matter where in the world you're looking at, there's an expectation that the organization will encourage entrepreneurial activity. That the real strength of the organization is inside in its employees and what they know. And if you can break down the bureaucracy to free them up, you'll be better off. The customer will be better off. The employees will be better off. And I share Stuart's observation. When you go to Louisville and you talk to the people at General Electric, they say we've been given our future back, which is quite a stunning statement, right? Up until the acquisition by Haier, they had been seen as a bank for more fashionable parts of the GE conglomerate. Now all of a sudden they were expected to have a future of their own. So I think there's the common thing. I agree exactly with what Joost is saying. You have to interpret it into your local market and your local culture, but there's a common expectation of entrepreneurship. I think that there's a reliance on small, micro or end-to-end types of organizations that have a high degree of autonomy, and there's responsibility. There's accountability. You may fail. I mean, nothing is for free. You need to be able to prove your ideas, make them work, run with them, and if you do, you'll share benefits beyond what a normal salary would have generated. And I sort of see that everywhere, expressed differently in different ways.
Yeah. We actually has a name for the replication of Rendanheyi in all our subsidiaries overseas. We call it salad culture. It's like different countries may have different cultures, and but the the source is Rendanheyi. You can use Rendanheyi, the key concepts like entrepreneurship and zero distance to customer to combine your businesses and to transform your businesses. Actually, GEA may have its own name for Rendanheyi for micro enterprises, but they are actually doing it, and the market reacts is good. They are doing their own MEs, starting their own businesses, and actually they are actually transforming their compensation systems. That's quite difficult actually in American culture, because people think I'm more comfortable with the fixed salary and is protected by the laws. But now we are at first we just try this in the top managers, and they received it quite well, and we are implementing this to the general employees. Is actually over 3,000 employees have changed their compensation systems and linked their salaries to the market's performance, and they received more salaries than before. So they actually are very satisfied. So they have their own cultures and they designed their own Rendanheyi models. So that's how we actually implement Rendanheyi in overseas industries.
Great. Stuart, do you want to add something? Because I've seen that you wanted to jump in a few seconds ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rendanheyi, it seems, I understand, as employees and users becoming one. Is that the Sylvia, Bill, or Joost?
Yeah, you can understand in that way.
Yeah, because I think that's the starting point of all conversations about the company, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let me add a couple of as we are approaching maybe the last question, and then we're gonna close more or less. I one thing I want to say to our attendees in the webinar is that we got like a avalanche of questions, and we're gonna use these questions to probably to frame the next webinar we want to run in May, before the class that we're gonna give in June. And for sure, this is gonna be very useful also in terms of how we structure the class that I will facilitate with Bill in June. So thanks for your questions. I think these are really important, and we're going to elaborate on that on blog posts and so on. But coming back to the flow of today, so we don't have much time anymore, but we want to address maybe another couple of questions before closing. There are lots of questions on essentially one thing, that is, how do you manage this creative entropy that can be generated in the organization? So what, for example, what happens when there are possibly conflicting ideas for micro enterprises in the group? And another question that is quite recurring is about managing failures. So what happens when your micro enterprise, for example, fails? So these are two questions that I would like to start. Maybe we can start from Sylvia, and you guys can address some of the nuances later on. So Sylvia, what happens, for example, if a micro enterprise fails? So basically it goes out of the market. What happens to the employees?
It's very simple. The EMC or the ME will just dissolve, because if you can't find a market, you can't find your own user needs, what's the point of existing? That's hard to say, but it's true. But if you can start from crashes again, even though your this business is failing, you can always start again.
Definitely. And when it comes instead to managing possibly two micro enterprises that are trying to to enter in same market or maybe developing similar products? How do they collaborate? Do they collaborate? Is there any overseeing activity that tries to ensure that these two enterprises don't compete or maybe work together, more generally collaborate together?
Actually, you can't avoid competition between two similar MEs. They can start similar businesses, but if you want to survive, it's really like the market rules. If you're gonna survive, you're gonna have some distinctive features to back yourself up. So normally in hires MEs, if there are two similar MEs, they may have their own focuses, and their overlapping area, they will compete. Definitely, they will compete. And if one is have more power, have definite power over the other, it will just eat it. I mean, it will like acquire the other ME and become one big ME. So that's normally how it happens.
Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, so, Sylvia, when we look at the smart home business, you have connected appliances, but you also have a large number of sales of standalone unconnected appliances. Are those two micro enterprises essentially competing against each other? A micro enterprise that's making unconnected refrigerators and a micro enterprise creating smart refrigerators, for example?
I think their customers are kind of different. Do you think? Yeah, I think there are a lot of customers that they don't need interconnected appliances. They just need a washing machine, a very simple product. And if they have the high end, I think the connected appliances ME is focused more on the high end customers. So they're gonna sell more and their solutions gonna worth more. So I'm not sure about the competition between them.
So you're in mute, Bill. Okay.
So I agree. I think there is no competition between them. I think they're selling to different market segments. And over time, I think, I about 5 or 6 years ago, I visited a group of people in Shanghai who were higher smart refrigerator people, and they were literally buying the dumb refrigerators and reconfiguring them to be smart. And I think today they're much more sophisticated, much more integrated. Their micro enterprise has proven to be successful. There's still people producing the unconnected refrigerators, but I suspect if you look over time, what you would see is the unconnected refrigerators 5 or 6 years ago were very strong, and the smart refrigerators were just getting started. And in 5 years, it'll be just the opposite. But they'll still be existing. They'll still be in parallel, not necessarily competing against each other, but serving different markets.
Yeah.
I think there's also two other things that play a role. I think there's like the micro enterprises, they are clustered on these platforms. In the platforms, they have like platform leaders or platform owners. And I think those leaders, they will look for collaboration opportunities, and I think for collaboration conflicts, and they will try to handle those. And there is another part of what happens if we talk about what happens when a micro enterprise fails. Everybody in hire, to my understanding, earns like a base salary, but this base salary is just a little bit too low to sustain yourself in daily life. So you must add value to the customer or add value to the organization to receive your like full salary. And when you start at hire, you are not most of the time not hired by the micro enterprise, but you are still hired by the corporation. You end up in a big what they call a talent pool. And from that talent pool, you receive your base salary and you will add value to a micro enterprise. I don't know what happens when you are fired from your micro enterprise. I'm not sure if you then also are kicked out of the talent pool, but maybe Sylvia, you can, you know the answer on that.
Sorry, I didn't get it. Could you repeat that again?
So if you are, so is it correct? There is this talent pool, and so if you enter higher, you enter higher into a big group of the big group of talent pool. You receive your base salary, and then you have to find opportunities within higher with other micro enterprises to add value and get your own targets.
Yeah. So the basic, I would say that the basic salary in higher is not that high, and most of your salaries is coming from those orders you take from different MEs, different EMCs. So you enter higher, it's just the beginning. It's not like you find a very like a gold ball. You're gonna fight for your salaries and create your own values for the users to earn that. So yes, if you enter higher, you just enter the talent pool.
Yeah. Okay.
So guys, since I think we are approaching the closure, I think I want to make a round quickly and let you maybe address something that you believe is important for the audience that is in the chat at the moment. So any closing remark that you guys want to share? You know, any of you? Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no disguising that hire is a challenging environment. But micro enterprises give people an opportunity to be entrepreneurial. If they fail, obviously it's not a good thing in general, but people return to the talent pool within the organization. Compare this with other corporations where there aren't the opportunities to be entrepreneurial. And the environment is not challenging. I think it's better to be challenged in these ways than to exist in the sterile, unchallenging environment, which is the case in many organizations where there aren't simply these opportunities. I'm not saying hire's got everything right, but it is exploring how best, I think, to give people the opportunities and the benefits of working for a large organization.
Yes, I agree that what hire is doing is just explorations. We are explorations, and we found what we are doing right and what we are doing wrong, and we collect some other ideas from. We learn a lot from other companies who is interested in the management transformation, and we hope that the webinar can serve as a platform to attract all of us together and to find a possible successful way to do the management in the future. So that's what Higher Model Research Institute is doing, and we hope to contribute to that.
Thank you. Yeah, of course, Bill. You go ahead.
So, you know, so my conclusion is, this is really fun. I mean, I can't think of an organization that's so interesting that we could have so many questions unanswered in the chat list, so many different perspectives on the same organization. I mean, for me, one of the joys of talking about hire is how it provokes us not to be hire, I mean, but to think about what could we learn from hire and apply in our own organizations. It's an organization that continuously provokes thought about what are we doing and how could we do it better. Hire offers one alternative, but we'd have to interpret it into what we're doing. I think work ought to be structured so that it gets the best out of us, not the worst. And I think that one of the things that we're hearing in today's conversation are bits and pieces of ways that really allow people to show their best rather than simply fit in. And I think that, every conversation about hire is equally as energizing. So thank you very much for for allowing me to be a part of this. This has been great fun.
Joost, you wanna close a little bit, and then I will share with our listeners just a couple of closing points.
Yeah, I agree with the previous closing. So I think sometimes it sounds maybe higher than it is in reality. So sometimes on paper, if you read about it or if you hear it about how they do certain things, it might sound harsh to you. But if you go there and if you go to China and you actually talk with entrepreneurs like Sylvia, but many others, you will soon realize that most of the time it is not that harsh. It is just their way of organizing differently, and it's actually very interesting, as Bill said. And I'm also happy that we are working together on this initiative to bring hire, to open up hire more to people that are very interested in following their footsteps. And I think you will talk about the webinar that comes up later this year. And would like to add that we are also working with you and with the Hire Institute to see if we can organize a trip for people that are truly interested in transforming their own business towards a more progressive one, to visit Qingdao for themselves and to speak with more entrepreneurs within Hire to get a really the real life experience. So we'll leave it up to you to provide more information about.
Thank you for that. So that's it. I mean, this is the first step. We are probably going to organize another webinar, free one, in May. That's something that I already want to do. Also to build on the tons of questions that you guys sent and that we couldn't address today. And but important thing is in June I will facilitate this online training, the first one, and then there will be another one probably in September that in 3 afternoons is going to try to consolidate much more practical and deep and exercise-based knowledge that you can apply to your organization as a leader, or even as a consultant and a designer or organizational developer, to the organizations you work with, and also to the institutions you work with, because we really believe that this is not just about private organizations. It can also be applicable to public institutions and so on. Of course, we are not going to tell you the story, the solution to all the problems of organizational development, but there's a lot of principles, a lot of elements of Rendanheyi that you can mutuate in your own organization. So again, stay tuned in the email that we sent after the webinar, because this masterclass will have the basics, the cultural elements. We're going to explore the pitfalls and the challenges. Everything is going to be done through a set of practical tools. Platform Design Toolkit and Boundaryless, we are pretty, we have the story of creating tools, open source tools that you can use. And this is somehow a continuation, because we are seeing a lot of I would say, continuity between how you address and organize a market with a platform strategy and how you organize your organization. So it's like a fractal platform process that we are seeing happening in how you organize organizations and markets. So again, I'm stressing the point that this class is going to be very accessible, and we have limited seatings. So please book your ticket and wait for our follow-up email from both Corporate Rebels and Boundaryless with some discount codes, and Thinkers 50 as well. So you stay tuned on your newsletters, let's say, and on the emails that we're going to send. And basically, I really want to thank everybody for the time. It was amazing for us and our panelists, and Sylvia from China. Now it's very late over there. So thanks for your time, and Joost and Stuart and Bill. It's a pleasure. And I think, as Joost said, it's exciting to collaborate all together into bringing these insights to the world of organizing and management. And Thanks, everybody. I'm going to stop the live stream at this moment. You will find everything on YouTube. Share it with your friends, share it with your colleagues, sharing it with your bosses, and let's reinvent organizations through a new lens and learn together. So thanks again, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.